Everyone, I'd like you to meet the woman who will carry this film. Malakas ang palakpak sa loob ng Stage 4 ng Reyes Motion Pictures nang iangat ni Adrian Reyes ang kamay ng babaeng nakatayo sa tabi niya. Sa ilalim ng matinding studio lights, kumislap ang silver dress ni Bianca Salazar habang ngumiti siya sa mga camera na parabang matagal na niyang hinihintay ang sandaling iyon. 29 na taong gulang. Maganda, elegant at sanay humarap sa press. Alam ni Bianca kung paano tumayo sa tamang anggulo para mahuli ng photographers ang pinakamagandang bahagi ng mukha niya. Adrian stood beside her in a dark tailored suit, one hand resting lightly against the small of her back. Napakaliit ng galaw. Halos walang makakapansin kung hindi nila alam kung ano ang hahanapin. Pero napansin ni Elena Villanueva Reyes. Siyempre napansin niya. Asawa niya ang lalaking iyon. Nakatayo si Elena malapit sa likod ng studio. Halos natatakpan ng 2 lighting rigs at isang stack ng equipment cases. Simple lamang ang suot niyang navy blouse. Cream trousers at low heels. Walang stylist. Walang jewelry maliban sa wedding ring na biglang parang mas mabigat kaysa dati. Sa paligid niya, mahigit 100 tao ang abala sa launch day ng pinakamalaking pelikulang gagawin ng Reyes Motion Pictures sa loob ng 5 taon. Production assistants ran between departments. Camera operators adjusted rigs. Costume staff guarded garment racks. Publicists whispered into headsets. Sa kabilang bahagi ng soundstage ay nakatayo ang malaking partial set ng lumang Manila Theater na magiging pangunahing location ng pelikulang Sa Likod ng Liwanag. Isang prestige drama na inaasahang magbabalik sa studio sa awards conversation matapos ang 2 commercial disappointments. At ngayon, sa harap ng buong production team, ipinapakilala ng asawa ni Elena ang kabit nito bilang bagong leading lady ng pelikulang siya mismo ang nagpondo. Bianca brings exactly the kind of energy we need. Patuloy ni Adrian. She's fearless, contemporary and emotionally unpredictable. When audiences see her as Isabel, they'll understand why we made this choice. Elena almost laughed. There had been no we. Hindi siya kasama sa desisyong iyon. At base sa mga mukha ng ilang executive sa harap, hindi rin sila. Sa tabi ng monitor station, ang direktor na si Mateo Santos ay hindi pumapalakpak. 58 years old, silver-haired, respected, and famously difficult. Mateo had spent nearly 2 years developing Sa Likod ng Liwanag. Siya ang pumili sa original actress pagkatapos ng mahabang audition process. Siya rin ang dahilan kung bakit pumayag ang Villanueva Arts and Media Fund na tustusan ang proyekto. Elena watched Mateo's jaw tighten as Bianca smiled toward the cameras. That told her everything. The director had not approved this either. 3 oras bago ang announcement, dumating si Elena sa studio nang walang entourage. Hindi alam ng karamihan sa crew kung sino siya. Ang public explanation ay simple: she was Adrian Reyes' wife. Occasionally seen at premieres but rarely involved in studio operations. Iyon ang gusto niya. For almost 3 years, Elena had deliberately separated herself from Reyes Motion Pictures, even though her investment vehicle had quietly become one of its most important financing partners. Hindi naman siya ipinanganak sa pelikula. Her father, Lorenzo Villanueva, built a logistics and property business before creating a small cultural foundation late in life. Elena expanded that foundation into the Villanueva Arts and Media Fund after his death, using private capital to support independent films, documentaries, and Filipino creative projects that commercial lenders considered too risky. She never wanted her name above a title. She wanted good projects to exist. When Adrian first brought Sa Likod ng Liwanag to her, he had not asked as a husband. At least, iyon ang sinabi niya. This needs patient money. Sabi nito noon habang inilalatag ang screenplay sa dining table nila. A normal studio financier will push us to turn it into a romance or cast whoever is trending. Elena had read the script overnight. By morning, she knew he was right. The story followed an aging stage actress and her estranged daughter trying to save a historic theater in Manila while confronting the family secrets buried inside it. Hindi flashy. Hindi madaling ibenta. But it was beautiful. So Elena did something she had promised herself never to do casually. She financed her husband's film. Not directly. The investment came through VAMF Screen Partners, a special purpose entity managed under the Villanueva Fund. Adrian knew Elena was connected to the capital, but the studio staff and most of the production team did not know she was the controlling investment chair. More importantly, she had insisted that creative decisions follow the same approval structure used for every other fund-backed film. No special treatment, no marital shortcuts. The contract contained a key creative personnel clause. Director, screenwriter, lead cast. Material changes required written approval from both the production company and the financing committee before funds could continue to be drawn. Adrian had signed it himself. At the time, Elena thought that meant something. 2 months ago, she began noticing Bianca. At first, there was nothing unusual. Bianca was a rising actress represented by one of the agencies that frequently worked with Reyes Motion Pictures. She had appeared in 2 streaming dramas and a successful romantic comedy. Attractive, marketable, disciplined in interviews. There were legitimate reasons for Adrian to meet her. Then the reasons became too frequent. Late dinners labeled casting discussions, weekend script sessions. Messages Adrian turned face down when Elena entered the room. A trip to Cebu where Bianca somehow appeared at the same resort despite not being attached to any announced Reyes project. Elena did not accuse him. Not because she trusted him completely. Because she wanted facts. 2 weeks before lunch day, those facts arrived without her asking. A photograph was sent anonymously to her private email. Adrian and Bianca leaving a restaurant in Makati after midnight. His hand at her waist, her head against his shoulder. It was not proof of everything. It was enough to make denial insulting. Elena had said nothing. Instead, she waited. Partly because she wanted to know whether Adrian would tell her himself, partly because something else bothered her even more. 3 days earlier, the production's original lead actress, award-winning performer Marisa De Leon, had suddenly been removed from the shooting schedule. The official explanation sent to financiers was ongoing talent negotiations. Elena had immediately asked her fund counsel whether a casting change had been submitted for approval. No. That morning, she came to the studio to find out why. Now she had her answer. Bianca? Ma'am Elena. A young production assistant approached her cautiously. Yes. Sir Adrian's office said you can wait in the executive lounge if you want. Medyo crowded po dito. Elena looked toward the stage where her husband was still presenting Bianca. I'm comfortable here. The assistant hesitated. Okay po. Who was supposed to shoot today? Ma'am? The lead actress. The girl looked uncomfortable. Miss Marisa Posana. What happened? I'm not sure po. Elena smiled gently. You're sure? You just don't know whether you're allowed to tell me. The assistant's face went pale. Elena softened her voice. It's okay. I won't put you in the middle. Thank you, Paul. Go. The girl hurried away. Elena looked toward Mateo again. This time, the director was already watching her. He recognized her. Not as Adrian's wife, as the person whose signature sat on the financing approval. Mateo excused himself from a group of producers and walked toward her. Elena. Director. You didn't tell me you were coming. I didn't know I needed permission. You know that's not what I meant. His eyes moved toward Adrian and Bianca. Elena asked quietly, Did you approve her? Mateo's expression answered before his mouth did. No. Did you approve removing Marisa? No. Did Marisa quit? No. Was she in breach? Not that I know. Elena's jaw tightened. Then what happened? Mateo glanced around them. Adrian said the studio wanted a more commercially viable lead. The studio? That's what he said. And you? I said the role was written for an actress who could carry 20 years of emotional history. Bianca is talented, but she wasn't even part of the final audition group. Elena looked back toward the stage. Did you know they were involved? Mateo went still. That was answer enough? How long have you known? I suspected. How long? A few months. Elena closed her eyes briefly. You should have told me. I didn't know what I could prove. You could have told me about the casting. That I should have done. Yes. Mateo accepted the rebuke. I'm sorry. Elena looked toward the enormous set surrounding them. Carpenters had worked weeks building it. Painters had aged the walls by hand. Costume designers had created dozens of period-inspired pieces. Hundreds of people had committed months of their lives to the film. Her anger could destroy all of that if she used it carelessly. That frightened her more than Adrian did. On stage, the presentation ended. Bianca stepped down first. Adrian followed. Several reporters moved toward them. Then Adrian saw Elena. His smile disappeared for half a second before returning. Elena. He walked toward her. Bianca followed? Of course she did. I thought you were coming later. Adrian said. I changed my schedule. You should have texted me. Would that have changed the announcement? He stopped. Bianca smiled politely. Hi, Elena. Bianca. I didn't know you were attending. I'm discovering there are several things people didn't know today. Bianca's smile tightened. Adrian glanced at Mateo. Can we not do this here? Elena looked at him. Do what? You know what I mean. No. Explain. He lowered his voice. Have a personal conversation in front of the crew. Elena almost smiled. You introduced your personal decision to the entire crew 5 minutes ago. Bianca's face changed. Excuse me. Elena looked at her. Was I unclear? Adrian stepped between them slightly. Enough. The word was quiet, authoritative. The same voice he used in production meetings. Elena stared at him. Enough. We'll talk at home. About which part? Elena. The affair or the casting? Everything around them seemed to stop. Not completely. A soundstage never became truly silent. Somewhere, a drill continued. A production assistant dropped something metal. But the people close enough to hear suddenly found reasons not to move. Bianca went pale. Adrian's face hardened. This is exactly why I said not here. So there is an affair. Elena, please? Bianca spoke first. You don't know what you're talking about. Elena turned toward her. I have photographs. Bianca froze. Adrian looked at Elena sharply. What photographs? That's your concern. I'm asking who sent them. And I'm asking why my husband is holding another woman outside a restaurant after midnight. No answer. Elena nodded. Good. At least we've located the relevant question. Bianca crossed her arms. Whatever is happening between you and Adrian has nothing to do with my casting. Mateo looked away. Elena noticed. So you auditioned? Bianca hesitated. I met with the studio. That wasn't my question. I was considered by Mateo. The director remained silent. Bianca looked at Adrian. Again, answer enough. Adrian exhaled. Marisa wasn't right for the commercial direction? According to whom? According to me. Only you. I'm the producer. Executive producer? And CEO of the studio. Elena nodded slowly. There it is. What? The part where you think titles remove the need for consent. His face hardened. This is a studio decision. No. Yes. No. Adrian. Casting the lead is a financed project decision. He stared at her. For the first time, concern replaced anger. Elena. You remember the financing agreement. This isn't the time. I think it's exactly the time. Bianca looked between them. What financing agreement? Adrian ignored her. Elena, don't mix our marriage with the film. The hypocrisy was so complete that Elena almost laughed. You cast the woman you're sleeping with as the lead actress and you're asking me not to mix our marriage with the film. Several people nearby visibly looked away. Adrian lowered his voice. I can explain the commercial case? Did the financing committee approve Marisa's removal? Silence. Did it? No. Did the committee approve Bianca? We were going to submit the change. When? After today? Elena stared at him. After publicly announcing her, it would have been ratified. By whom? The committee. You sound very confident. Because the studio has creative discretion. Within the approved key personal framework, Adrian's face changed. He remembered. Elena could see the exact moment. The clause. Section 8. C. Material replacement of lead cast without written financier approval constituted a key creative breach and allowed suspension of undrawn financing pending cure. Bianca looked confused. Adrian? He did not answer her. Instead, he stepped closer to Elena. Let's go upstairs. No. We can discuss this privately. No. Elena, there are hundreds of jobs attached to this film. I know. Then don't react emotionally. That did it. Not because the words were cruel. Because they revealed exactly what he believed. His decision to replace the lead actress with his mistress was business. Her refusal to finance it would be emotion? Elena looked at him for several seconds. Then she removed her phone from her handbag. What are you doing? Making sure I don't react emotionally. She called one number. The line answered almost immediately. Attorney Lim. Adrian's face lost color. Bianca looked at him. Who's Attorney Lim? Elena continued looking at her husband. Daniel? Are you with the financing committee? Yes. Elena. I'm at Reyes Motion Pictures. I know. Has VAMF Screen Partners received any written requests approving replacement of Marisa De Leon as the lead performer in Sa Likod ng Liwanag? No. Has any approval been issued for Bianca Salazar? No. Has the production publicly announced the replacement? There was a pause. We were just informed they did. Elena looked at Adrian. Then activate Section 8. C. Adrian stepped forward. Elena, She raised one hand. He stopped. Attorney Lim's voice remained calm through the phone. To confirm, you are directing suspension of all undrawn production financing pending breach review. Yes. Bianca's eyes widened. Mateo said nothing. Adrian stared at his wife. Elena, think about what you're doing. You'll shut down production. No. You created the breach. I'm stopping our money from financing it until we determine whether it can be cured. That's semantics. No. That's governance. Attorney Lim asked, do you want a formal notice issued immediately? Elena looked around the soundstage. At the half-built theater. At the lights. At crew members who had nothing to do with her husband's choices. Her anger wanted one answer. Her responsibility required another. Immediate suspension of new draws. She said, existing payroll obligations already incurred remain protected under the crew continuity provision. No worker misses a paycheck because of this review? Mateo looked at her sharply. Adrian said nothing. Understood? Attorney Lim replied. And freeze approval on principal photography until the KeyCast breach is cured. Confirmed. Send formal notice to Reyes Motion Pictures. The completion guarantor and production council? Yes. Elena ended the call. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Bianca finally broke the silence. What just happened? Adrian looked at Elena. Not at Bianca. At Elena. What did you do? She placed the phone back into her handbag. What the contract allows. Bianca laughed nervously. Adrian, what is she talking about? He still did not answer. Elena did. The project financing is suspended. Bianca stared at her. You can't do that. Elena looked at her calmly. I just did. Who are you? That question moved through the nearby crew faster than any announcement Adrian had made on stage. Who are you? Elena glanced at Mateo. The director gave the smallest nod. She turned back toward Bianca. My name is Elena Villanueva Reyes. I know that. I mean, what do you have to do with the financing? Adrian closed his eyes briefly. He knew the answer would change the room. Elena did not raise her voice. I chair the investment committee of the Villanueva Arts and Media Fund. Bianca's face emptied. Elena continued. VAMF Screen Partners is our film financing vehicle. One of the line producers nearby whispered something under his breath. Bianca looked at Adrian. You said the investors were institutional. They are, Elena said. Then she looked at her husband. I simply happened to control the institution. No one moved. The woman who had stood unnoticed near the lighting equipment 20 minutes earlier was suddenly the most important person on the sound stage. Bianca stared at the giant sa likod ng liwanag title behind them. How much? Elena did not answer. Adrian did? Most of the senior financing. Bianca turned toward him in disbelief. You knew? Yes. And you still announced me without approval. Adrian's jaw tightened. I expected the change to pass. Elena looked at him. Because I'm your wife. He said nothing. Say it. Elena. Did you think I would approve it because I'm your wife? No. Then why were you so sure? Adrian had no good answer. That was the truth. He had treated the financing committee the same way he had treated his marriage. As something that would still be there after he made the decision. Mateo stepped forward. What happens now? Elena turned toward him. We review whether the project can be cured. You're not killing the film. Adrian looked at her too. Elena's eyes moved around the studio. No. A murmur went through the nearby crew. Not yet. Bianca's expression tightened. What does cure mean? Elena looked at her. It means we return the production to the last properly approved position while the breach is reviewed. Bianca understood before Adrian spoke. You mean Marisa? Yes. You're firing me. No? Elena's voice remained calm. I never hired you. The sentence landed harder than shouting could have. Bianca's eyes filled with humiliation. For a brief moment, Elena saw the temptation to enjoy it. She refused. This isn't about whether you're talented. Elena continued. It's about the fact that you were announced into a role without the required approval while you were in an undisclosed relationship with the producer making that decision. Bianca looked at Adrian. You said everything was handled. Adrian's face tightened. I thought it would be. That's not the same thing. No. Elena heard the fear beneath Bianca's anger. For the first time, she understood that Adrian had probably told both women versions of the future that depended on everyone else cooperating. She turned to Mateo. Stop principal photography for today? Mateo nodded. What about prep? Keep departments working where possible. Nobody destroys sets. Nobody sends crew home permanently. Production management coordinates with the fund council. Adrian looked at her. You're taking over my studio. No. Feels like it. I'm protecting my investment. Our investment. Elena looked directly at him. No. The word was quiet. The film is an investment we both supported. The fund is not marital property for you to command. He absorbed that. Then she added, and after what you did, you should be very careful using the word our. Adrian's face fell. Bianca stepped away from him. Did you tell her you were going to leave? Elena looked at Bianca. Adrian went completely still. There it was. The second explosion. Bianca's eyes remained on him. You told me after this film started, you would talk to her. Elena felt something cold move through her. After the film started, Bianca realized what she had revealed. Adrian said, Bianca, stop. No, Elena said. Both looked at her. Let her finish. Bianca's anger shifted from Sofia to Adrian. No. Elena reminded herself. This was her story now, not someone else's pattern. Bianca looked at him. You said once production was secure, you would stop pretending your marriage was working. Elena stared at her husband. Production secure, financing drawn, lead actress installed. Then he would decide what to do with his wife. The cruelty was almost elegant in its planning. Is that true? Elena asked. Adrian's silence lasted too long. Elena, I was confused. She nodded. There it was again. Confusion used as a waiting room where everyone else had to remain available. Elena removed her wedding ring. Adrian's eyes dropped to her hand. She did not throw it. She did not give it to him. She placed it carefully inside her handbag. What does that mean? He asked. It means I don't want to wear a symbol while I'm still learning what it represents. Elena? Not here. He flinched. The phrase had been his earlier. Now it belonged to her. She looked toward Mateo. Director, I want a full creative status report by tomorrow. Original casting. Contracts. Department commitments. Sunk costs. and what it takes to resume under the approved package. Mateo nodded. You'll have it. To production management, protect the crew payroll. The line producer nearby answered. Yes, ma'am. And no press statement blaming Bianca. Bianca looked surprised. Elena continued. The governance failure belongs to the people with authority. Her eyes moved to Adrian. He understood. Tomorrow at 10, she said. Financing review. Adrian nodded slowly. Elena, can we talk tonight? She looked at him. About the marriage. Yes. No? His face tightened. Why? Because tonight you'll be afraid of losing the film. The financing, and me at the same time. I don't want an apology from a man who doesn't yet know which loss he's apologizing for. Adrian had no response. Elena turned and walked toward the soundstage exit. This time, no one asked her to wait in the executive lounge. Crew members moved aside. Not because she was Adrian Reyes's wife. Because they finally understood why the production had stopped. At the door, Elena paused. She looked back at the enormous fake theater set standing beneath the studio lights. A story about a woman trying to save a theater from people who wanted to reshape it for their own purposes. The irony was almost insulting. Mateo stood beside the monitors. Bianca stood alone several feet from Adrian. And Adrian Reyes, CEO of the studio, remained in the center of a project he had assumed he controlled. 1 minute earlier, he had introduced another woman as the star of his film. Now he did not even know whether there would still be a film tomorrow. Elena opened the door. Outside, the afternoon sun was painfully bright. Her phone vibrated before she reached the parking area. Formal notice issued. Financing suspended pending key creative breach review. She read it once, then locked the screen. She had not cancelled sa likod ng liwanag out of revenge. Not yet. What she had cancelled was Adrian's assumption that everyone else would finance the consequences of decisions he made alone. Tomorrow, she would decide whether the film deserved to survive him. And for the first time in their marriage, Adrian would have no vote in what Elena chose to do with herself. Kinabukasan, 9:30 pa lamang, ay halos puno na ang executive conference room ng Reyes Motion Pictures. Karaniwan, ang silid na iyon ay ginagamit para sa quarterly meetings, distribution negotiations, at private screenings para sa investors. Ngunit ngayong umaga ay parang courtroom ang atmosphere. Nasa isang panig ng mahabang mesa ang production team ng sa likod ng liwanag director Mateo Santos. Line producer, Celeste Navarro. Production council at 2 department representatives. Sa kabilang panig ay nakaupo ang executives ng Reyes Motion Pictures kasama ang Chief Financial Officer at Head of Production. Sa dulo ng mesa, bakante ang upuang karaniwang ginagamit ni Adrian. Walang nakakaalam kung sinadya niyang mahuli o kung may emergency siyang inaayos. Eksaktong 10:00 nang bumukas ang pinto at pumasok si Elena Villanueva Reyes kasama si Attorney Daniel Lim at 2 miyembro ng Investment Committee ng VAMF Screen Partners. Simple ang suot niyang charcoal gray suit at puting blouse. Walang wedding ring sa kaliwang kamay niya. Ilang tao ang napatingin doon bago agad ibinalik ang mga mata sa documents sa harap nila. Elena noticed, she simply did not care. Before we begin, I want one thing clear. Sabi ni Elena matapos umupo. This is a financing and production review. Hindi ito meeting tungkol sa marriage ko. Hindi ito trial tungkol sa personal relationship ni na Adrian at Bianca. At hindi ito pagkakataon para gumawa tayo ng scapegoat. Ang tanong ngayon ay simple, may contractual breach ba? Maaari ba itong ayusin? At karapat-dapat pa bang ipagpatuloy ang pelikula? Mateo nodded slightly. Celeste visibly relaxed. Maraming crew members ang natakot mula nang lumabas ang suspension notice dahil ang salitang financing suspended ay mabilis na nagiging film cancelled kapag dumaan sa production gossip. Elena knew that. Kaya bago pa magsimula ang substantive discussion, inulit niya ang ginawa niyang instruction noong nakaraang araw. Existing crew payroll remains protected. Nobody loses compensation already earned because management violated an approval process. The head of production cleared his throat. But if principal photography stays frozen beyond this week, we start losing people to other commitments. Then give me exact numbers. Sagot ni Elena. Don't use workers as emotional leverage. Tell me what the delay actually costs. Bumukas ang pinto makalipas ang ilang segundo. Adrian entered alone. Wala si Bianca. He looked like he had not slept. Dark suit, no tie. Eyes slightly red. Hindi siya humingi ng paumanhin sa pagiging late. Umupo siya sa bakanting upuan at tumingin kay Elena. She acknowledged him with the same small nod she would have given any executive. That hurt him more than anger might have. We can start? Sabi niya. Attorney Lim opened the financing agreement and projected Section 8. 4 onto the screen. The language was unambiguous. Lead cast qualified as key creative personnel. Any material replacement required written financier consent before public commitment or commencement of performance. Unauthorized replacement constituted a curable breach. But the financier had the right to suspend undrawn funds during review. Adrian did not contest the clause. Instead, he leaned forward and said, I'm not arguing that the process was violated. It was. Several executives looked at him. Then why did you do it, tanong ng CFO? Adrian paused. Because I believe Bianca would strengthen the commercial package. And I believe the committee would approve the change afterward. Elena's expression did not move. You're leaving out the conflict. Adrian looked at her. Yes. Then include it. He inhaled. Bianca and I were in a personal relationship when I made the decision. The sentence landed heavily around the room. Was that relationship disclosed to the board? Attorney Lim asked. No. To production counsel, no. To the director, no. Mateo leaned back. I knew enough to suspect. I did not know enough to formally document it. Attorney Lim made a note. Elena turned toward Mateo. Tell us about Marisa. The director opened the production file. Marisa De Leon had completed costume fittings, rehearsals, and 2 weeks of table work. Her contract was signed. No misconduct complaint existed. No medical issue prevented her performance. No formal creative failure had been documented. Did you ask for her replacement? Elena asked. No. Did the screenwriter know? Was there a negative audience test? We hadn't done one. Then on what creative basis was she removed? Mateo looked at Adrian. I was told the studio wanted a more marketable actress. Adrian answered before Elena could ask again. That was my decision. Elena folded her hands. Was Marisa informed that she was being replaced? Celeste answered this time. Her agent was told negotiations were paused pending internal restructuring. Elena's eyes hardened. Sono? No. Meaning yesterday. While Bianca was being publicly introduced as the lead, the contracted actress still had not received a formal termination notice. Nobody answered. Elena looked down at the documents. That is not merely bad governance. That is disrespectful. Adrian leaned forward. I'll take responsibility for that. Elena looked at him. Responsibility is not a sentence you say. It's what happens after the sentence. He absorbed the rebuke without responding. Attorney Lim continued through the consequences. If Marissa had been wrongfully displaced, Reyes Motion Pictures could face contractual liability. If Bianca had received assurances before approval, separate obligations might exist depending on what Adrian promised. If the completion guarantor determined that management instability materially threatened production, the entire financing structure could become more expensive. The room became increasingly uncomfortable as the affair transformed from gossip into numbers. Elena had always believed that powerful people understood consequences best when consequences stopped being abstract. The next question came from the head of production. Are we restoring Marissa immediately? Elena shook her head. Not automatically. Adrian looked surprised. Yesterday you said cure meant returning to the last approved position. It means that is our baseline. It doesn't mean we force an actress back into a project after publicly humiliating her. She turned to Mateo. Has anyone spoken to Marissa directly? Her agent called me last night, and she's furious. She also doesn't know whether she wants to return. Elena nodded. Then we ask. We don't assume? Adrian stared at her. If she refuses, then you submit a legitimate replacement process. Audition. Director recommendation. Conflict review. Financing approval? The boring way. We'll lose weeks. Yes. And money. Yes? You're comfortable with that? Elena looked at him. I'm more comfortable losing money than teaching everyone in this room that contracts only matter until the CEO wants something. Mateo almost smiled. Adrian did not. And Bianca, he asked? Elena's gaze sharpened. What about her? If Marissa refuses, is Bianca automatically excluded? The question caused several heads to turn. Elena understood immediately what everyone would assume if she answered too quickly. If she said yes, it would look like a wife punishing her husband's mistress. If she said no, it might appear that the conflict did not matter. She is not automatically anything. Elena said, if there is a new casting process, she may only be considered if legal and ethics review determines her participation does not create an unmanageable conflict. And if Mateo independently wants her to audition. No promises. No guaranteed role. Mateo nodded. Adrian studied Elena carefully. You'd allow her to audition if the process is clean? After what happened, Elena's eyes met his. My marriage is not a casting criterion. Adrian looked away. The meeting continued for almost 2 hours. They reviewed sunk costs, shooting schedules, location holds, and crew commitments. Canceling the film immediately would cost millions and likely damage hundreds of workers and vendors who had nothing to do with Adrian's decision. Continuing without restructuring would reward the breach. By noon, the financing committee proposed a 7-day cure period. During that week, principal photography would remain suspended, but set construction, wardrobe, preservation, location coordination, and other approved preparation could continue under controlled spending. Reyes Motion Pictures had to formally disclose the conflict, resolve Marissa's contract status, submit a revised casting process, and temporarily remove Adrian from unilateral creative approval on the project. That final condition changed the room. Adrian looked at Attorney Liam. Remove me from creative approval, temporarily, Danielle answered, until the breach is cured and governance safeguards are in place. I developed this film. Mateo finally spoke. So did I. Adrian turned toward him. I'm not saying you didn't. You replaced my lead actress without telling me. I made a studio decision. You made a personal decision wearing a studio suit? Silence. Adrian's face hardened, but he did not attack back. Mateo continued. You want this film to survive? Then stop making everyone protect your authority from the consequences of how you used it. Elena watched her husband carefully. There had been a time when any challenge to Adrian in front of others would make him immediately defensive. He would become colder, more articulate, and more dangerous in an argument. Today, he looked exhausted. Fine, he said eventually. I'll step back from casting approval during the cure period. The head of production stared at him. Elena did not thank him. Again, this was not generosity. After the meeting ended, Elena asked Mateo to stay. Adrian also remained, though nobody had invited him to. Elena noticed but allowed it. I want to speak to Marisa, she told Mateo. Directly? With her agent present if she wants? I can arrange it, Adrian said. I should apologize to her. Elena turned toward him. Eventually? Why not now? Because right now your apology is attached to a film you need her to save. Adrian went still. So when am I allowed to apologize? When you can do it without asking for anything afterward? Mateo looked between them and quietly excused himself. When the door closed, husband and wife were alone for the first time since the studio confrontation. Adrian remained on one side of the table. Elena stayed seated on the other. Neither moved closer. You didn't cancel it, he said. Not yet. You could have. Yes. Why didn't you, Elena, look at the abandoned coffee cups and scattered contracts? Because 218 people are currently attached to this production, not counting vendors. Because Mateo spent 2 years on the script. Because Marisa was treated badly enough without also having her work erased. Because the film was good before you made it about yourself. Adrian lowered his eyes. I deserve that. Stop telling me what you deserve. It's becoming another way of making yourself the center. He nodded slowly. Okay. Elena stood and collected her papers. Is Bianca here? No. Where is she? Her agency told her not to come until legal clarifies her status. Good. Adrian looked at Elena's bare left hand. You took off the ring. Yes. Are you leaving me? Elena stopped gathering the papers. I don't know. Do you still love me? The question angered her more than she expected. You don't get to ask for reassurance 24 hours? After I discover you plan to leave me after securing my financing. I wasn't planning it like that. Bianca said you told her after production was secure. I said I would make a decision after the film started. That was cowardly. But it wasn't a plan to steal your money. Do you hear yourself? Elena asked. You separated the money from the marriage in your head because that made everything easier. You thought the financing would stay even if the wife didn't? Adrian said nothing. That's what hurts most. She continued. Not that you wanted someone else. People change. Feelings change. But you built a transition where you kept everything stable for yourself until you were ready to choose. Adrian stood. You're right. Elena's eyes flashed. I don't need you to agree with everything because you're afraid I'll cancel the film. I'm not. How would I know that stop him? Elena continued. Quieter now. That's the problem. Adrian, every apology you make this week is contaminated. Every promise sounds connected to financing. Every time you say you love me, I'll wonder whether you mean me or the fact that I can save your studio. The studio isn't worth more than you. Yesterday, you acted like both were guaranteed. The words hung between them. Adrian sat down again. What do you want me to do? Elena looked at him. Nothing for me today. Elena, go fix what you did to the production. Tell your board the truth. Cooperate with legal. Stop calling Bianca unless it's through whatever process council recommends. Speak to Marisa when she's ready, not when you need forgiveness. And don't come to my apartment. Our apartment? Not right now. Adrian's face tightened, but he nodded. Okay. That afternoon, Elena met Marisa de Leon in a quiet private room at a hotel in Makati. Marisa arrived with her agent, wearing sunglasses and a plain black shirt, looking more tired than angry. At 42, she had spent over 20 years in the industry and knew exactly how studios replaced women when someone younger became more commercially exciting. I'm not interested in being restored like damaged furniture, she said, after Elena explained the cure process. I understand. Do you? Probably not completely. Marisa removed her sunglasses. They made me rehearse for 2 weeks. Mateo and I rebuilt half the character together. Then suddenly nobody could tell me whether I was shooting Monday. Yesterday, I opened my phone and saw Bianca standing on my set. Elena felt the shame even though she had not caused it. You were treated badly. Yes. I'm not asking you to forgive the studio. Then what are you asking? Whether you still want the role if the conditions are corrected. Marisa studied her. Because you need the film saved, partly. Elena did not lie. And because the role was yours under an approved contract. I don't want my anger at Adrian to make your decision for you either. Marisa leaned back. And Bianca, not approved. Your husband's girlfriend? Yes. That must be humiliating. Elena held her gaze. It is. Marisa nodded slowly. Perhaps respecting the lack of performance? Then why aren't you killing the film? Because if I destroy everyone's work to punish him, I become another person, using authority to solve a personal problem? Marisa was quiet for several seconds. I'll think about coming back. That's all I'm asking. I have conditions. Elena almost smiled. Good. Mateo retains casting authority. Adrian stays out of my performance notes. My contract gets extended for the delay. And I want a written non-retaliation clause if I speak publicly about what happened. Reasonable. You didn't even negotiate. I said reasonable. Not approved. Marisa smiled for the first time. Now you sound like an investor. By evening, the story had leaked. Entertainment sites reported that production on Sa Likod ng Liwanag had been suspended after an internal casting dispute. None had the full financing story yet, but photographs from Bianca's introduction were already circulating. One headline called her the surprise new muse of Reyes Motion Pictures. Another asked why Marisa de Leon had been replaced. Elena ignored most of it until her phone showed a message from Attorney Lim. We have a bigger issue. Someone sent us Bianca's preliminary talent memo. Adrian personally authorized a signing bonus. The payment source appears to be the film production account. Elena stopped walking. She called immediately. How much? 2 million pesos. Was it paid? The transfer was initiated 3 days ago. Approved by whom? Adrian and the studio finance controller. Elena closed her eyes. Was the talent memo countersigned by production council? No. Was Bianca an approved key cast member at the time? No. Then why did finance release it? That's what we need to investigate. This was no longer only about an unauthorized announcement. Elena returned to the fund office and requested the transaction file. 30 minutes later, she was looking at a scanned authorization bearing Adrian's digital signature. The payment description read, Lead talent commitment fee. No financing committee approval. No executed cast amendment. No director sign-off. She felt anger rising again. But this time it was colder. Her phone rang. Adrian? She answered. Did you authorize Bianca's 2 million peso signing payment? Silence. Elena, I can explain. Did you? Yes. From the production account? Yes. Before she was approved, I expected the approval. Elena closed her eyes. There it was again. He expected. He assumed. He decided first and planned to obtain consent later. Was the money transferred because she was your girlfriend? No. Would you have authorized 2 million pesos before committee approval for another actress? Adrian did not answer quickly enough. Elena whispered, That's what I thought. It wasn't a gift. I didn't say it was. She had to block her schedule. For a role she didn't have. I believe she would have it. You keep saying that like belief is authority. Adrian's breathing changed on the other end. What happens now? Elena looked at the contract open on her laptop. Section 8. 4 had suspended the financing, but unauthorized use of controlled production funds triggered a different section. Section 11. Financial covenant breach. More serious. Potentially non-curable depending on intent and repayment. Elena felt no satisfaction. Only exhaustion. Tomorrow's review just changed. She said. What does that mean? It means we're no longer deciding only whether the casting can be fixed. She looked at Adrian's signature. We're deciding whether Reyes Motion Pictures can remain the producer. Silence. Elena. I told you yesterday I would decide whether the film deserved to survive you. Elena, don't do this over the phone. This isn't about the marriage. You know it is? No. Her voice became very calm. That's exactly what you still don't understand. She ended the call. Across Manila, Adrian remained alone in his office, staring at the dark screen of his phone. For the first time since founding Reyes Motion Pictures, losing a film was no longer the worst possible outcome. He could lose control of the production entirely. At the VAMF office, Elena opened the financing agreement and placed the unauthorized payment record beside it. She thought of the hundreds of crew members. Mateo, Marisa, the unfinished theater set, the screenplay she had once read overnight and loved enough to fund. Then she thought of Adrian, not as her husband, as the executive who had just given her a reason to remove him from his own movie. Tomorrow, Elena would have to decide whether saving Sa Likod ng Liwanag meant taking it away from the man who had brought it to her in the first place. And this time, there would be no clause protecting Adrian from the answer. 10:00 ng umaga. Walang bakanteng upuan sa conference room ng VAMF Screen Partners. Iba ang lugar sa executive room ng Reyes Motion Pictures. Walang framed movie posters. Walang award sa shelves. Walang photographs ng celebrities na nakangiti sa tabi ng studio executives. Glass walls. Long wooden table. 2 screens at halos walang dekorasyon maliban sa maliit na painting ng lumang sinehan sa eskolta. Elena deliberately chose the fund office for the second review because she did not want Adrian sitting beneath his own company logo while everyone discussed whether he deserved to remain in control. Nasa isang bahagi ng mesa sina Attorney Daniel Lim, 2 investment committee members, at independent financial auditor na si Teresa Ong. Sa kabilang panig ay sina Mateo Santos, Celeste Navarro at production counsel. Adrian arrived 5 minutes early this time. He came without his studio legal team, except for one outside attorney. Wala pa ring Bianca. Nang pumasok si Elena. Tumayo ang ilang tao. "Please sit," sabi niya. She placed a thin folder on the table. Hindi makapalang folder. Ngunit alam ni Adrian kung ano ang nasa loob. 2 million peso commitment fee. His authorization. His signature. Attorney Lim opened the meeting by explaining that the previous day's creative bridge review had expanded into a financial covenant review. The production account was controlled money. Hindi ibig sabihin na bawat maliit na expense ay kailangang dumaan sa investment committee. Ngunit may approved budget categories at authority limits. A lead talent commitment outside the approved cast package required supporting documents and production council clearance. Bianca had neither. The payment had been initiated but fortunately had not fully settled before the financing freeze triggered a banking hold. "So the money never reached her?" tanong ni Mateo. "Correct," sagot ni Teresa Ong. The transfer was stopped before settlement. Adrian leaned forward. "Then there's no actual loss." Elena looked at him. "That is not your strongest argument." He closed his mouth. Teresa continued. "The issue is authorization, not only final loss. The payment was coded as an approved lead talent commitment even though no approved lead change existed." She turned toward Adrian. "Who instructed finance to use that code?" Adrian answered. "I did." "Did the controller question it?" "Yes. And I told him the casting amendment was being finalized." "Was it?" Adrian hesitated. "No." Teresa made a note. Elena watched him. The affair hurt her as a wife. This hurt differently. She had trusted him as a business partner because she believed. Whatever happened personally, Adrian respected process when other people's money was involved. Now, she was discovering that entitlement did not remain neatly inside marriage. "Why 2 million?" Elena asked. Adrian looked at her. Bianca had another series offer. Her agency wanted a commitment if she blocked the schedule. "So you committed production funds to stop her taking another job before she legally had this one?" "Yes." "Did you tell her the financing committee had not approved her?" "I told her final paperwork was pending." "That isn't what I asked." Adrian's face tightened. "No? Did you tell her Mateo had not approved her?" She knew Mateo preferred Marissa. Mateo's expression hardened. "Preferred I cast Marissa. That isn't a preference between menu items." Adrian looked toward him. "I know. You know now." "Yes." Elena stopped the exchange before it became personal. Did Bianca know her payment was coming from the controlled production account? Adrian shook his head. "I don't think so." "Then we do not accuse her of financial misconduct without evidence." Attorney Lim nodded. It was an important distinction. Bianca had participated in an affair and accepted a role she should have known was ethically compromised. That did not automatically make her responsible for the accounting decision Adrian made. The auditor presented the rest of the preliminary review. No evidence had yet emerged of broader misappropriation. There were no unexplained personal expenses, no payments to shell vendors, and no pattern suggesting Adrian had been taking money from the film. The 2 million peso transfer appeared isolated and directly connected to Bianca's casting. That mattered. Elena did not want a revenge narrative disguised as forensic accounting. "So we are not calling this theft," she said. "Correct." Teresa replied, "Based on current evidence, I would call it an unauthorized commitment and inaccurate expense authorization." "Can it be cured?" asked one investment committee member. Attorney Lim answered carefully. "Financially, yes. Governance-wise, only with safeguards." The fund has the right to terminate. But termination is not mandatory. Everyone looked toward Elena. She hated that moment. Power always became most visible when a room waited for one person to speak. "What are our options?" she asked Daniel, even though she already knew. One, terminate financing and exercise step-in protections where available, likely ending this version of the production. Two, allow Reyes Motion Pictures to remain producer under enhanced controls while Adrian is removed from financial and key creative authority. 3. Negotiate a production transfer or co-production restructuring, preserving the film but changing who controls it. Adrian's jaw tightened at the third option. Transferred to whom? Daniel looked at him. Potentially another production company? Potentially a newly formed production vehicle managed by an independent producer? Adrian turned toward Elena. "You're considering taking the movie away from the studio." "I'm considering all contractual options." "It was developed at Reyes." Mateo spoke before she could continue. "The screenplay existed before Reyes financed development." Adrian looked at him. "We paid for 2 years of work, and the fund paid most of the production package. That doesn't make it their movie." Elena finally intervened. "Stop using the word there like I'm sitting here waiting to steal something from you. Nobody in this room owns the entire film. Rights are divided by contracts. That's why contracts exist." The committee called a short break. Adrian walked toward Elena before she could leave the room. 5 minutes? About the production, yes. She nodded. They moved into a smaller meeting room with glass walls. Adrian remained standing. "Don't transfer it." Elena placed her folder on the table. "Give me a business reason." He blinked. "We have infrastructure, distribution relationships, marketing capability, all replaceable, not without cost. Better." She sat. "Keep going." Adrian understood what she was doing. If he wanted the project, he had to argue like a producer, not a husband. Reyes already carries development overhead. We have contracts with department heads. We have studio space. Our domestic distribution arrangement is stronger than any independent vehicle you could assemble this late. A transfer would delay production at least 8 to 12 weeks and could trigger location and cast losses. Elena nodded. "Those are real reasons." "Then keep us as producer." "You're missing the problem." "Me?" "Yes." Adrian looked away. "Then remove me from the film." Elena had expected resistance. "Not that." "What? Keep Reyes Motion Pictures as producer. Put Celeste or another independent producer in operational control. I recuse from casting. Talent payments. Daily creative notes and project spending above whatever threshold the committee wants." Elena studied him. "You would do that if the alternative is killing Mateo's film because I abused my authority?" "Yes." For several seconds, Elena said nothing. Adrian continued. "I know you think every concession I make is because I'm afraid of losing financing. I don't think it. You consider it possible? Fair. But the studio is bigger than me. There are people there who didn't do this. If Reyes can still provide the infrastructure without me controlling the project, that's better for the film than a transfer." Elena hated that he was making sense. Part of her wanted the clean satisfaction of removing him completely. That was exactly why she could not decide based on that feeling. "Would your board accept it? They might prefer it to losing the project." "And your ego?" Adrian almost smiled. "Less cooperative." "That's not my problem." "I know." Before Elena left the small room, Adrian said, "There's something else." She turned. "Bianca and I are over." Elena's face became immediately cold. I didn't ask. I know. Then why are you telling me because you deserve accurate information? Did you end it because of me? Or because she became a liability? Adrian flinched. Neither answer will sound good. Try the true one. He looked through the glass wall toward the conference room. She ended it first. Elena had not expected that. Why? Because she realized I had lied to her too. About what? About how secure the role was. About how close I was to leaving the marriage. About how much control I actually had. Elena felt something almost like pity. But not for him. So you promised 2 women futures you hadn't earned. Yes? And now you want credit for giving me accurate information? No. Adrian looked at her. I just don't want another important fact reaching you from someone else. That was the first explanation she believed without qualification. Fine? She said. Now I know. When the meeting resumed, Elena proposed a path. Nobody in the room had expected her to support. Reyes Motion Pictures would remain the physical production company, but Adrian would be removed from all direct authority over sa likod ng liwanag for the remainder of the cure period and, if financing resumed, through principal photography, unless the investment committee later approved his return. Celeste Navarro would become supervising producer. Mateo would retain creative authority within the approved budget. All lead casting changes would require independent committee approval. Any talent payment above a specified threshold would require dual authorization. An outside compliance officer would monitor the production account. Adrian would retain only the corporate rights attached to Reyes Motion Pictures and would receive regular producer-level reports without intervention rights. That's effectively putting my own movie under supervision, he said. Elena looked at him. You suggested removing yourself. I did. Do you withdraw? That Adrian stared at the proposal. No. Then we proceed to vote. The committee approved the restructuring subject to Reyes Motion Pictures board consent. It was not a victory for Elena. It was a compromise designed to keep the film alive without pretending nothing happened. Mateo looked relieved. Celeste looked terrified. Congratulations, Mateo told her. You're now responsible for the most dysfunctional film in Manila. Celeste stared at him. I hate all of you. Even Elena laughed. The tension in the room loosened for the first time in 2 days. There remained one major problem, Marisa. That afternoon, her agent called. She would return under revised terms. But she wanted to speak with Mateo and Elena before signing. More importantly, she wanted a guarantee that the production would not use the scandal as marketing. No interviews about being replaced by the mistress. Her agent said. No redemption campaign. No exploiting her humiliation. Elena answered immediately. Agreed. The agent paused. You don't want to negotiate that? No. She's right. The financial terms took longer. But by evening they had a framework. If Marisa signed, the biggest creative breach could be cured within the 7-day period. Bianca, meanwhile, was facing a very different reality. Her agency suspended representation pending internal review because she had accepted a public announcement without a finalized contract and failed to disclose the relationship with Adrian to them. Entertainment sites had discovered enough of the story to turn her into the easiest villain. Photographs from the launch circulated beside headlines calling her a homewrecker actress and CEO's secret leading lady. Elena saw one article while checking her phone and immediately called Attorney Lim. Did our side leak anything? No? Make sure it stays that way. You're worried about Bianca. I'm worried about people using a woman as the entire scandal because it's easier than explaining governance. Daniel was quiet. Understood. That evening, Bianca herself called Elena. She almost declined. Then she answered, "What do you want?" There was no arrogance in Bianca's voice now. 5 minutes. Elena looked at the clock. "You have 5? I didn't know the money wasn't approved." "The signing payment, yes. My agent told me Adrian had arranged a commitment. I thought the paperwork was normal. I believe that's possible." Bianca seemed surprised. "You do. Don't confuse that with believing you did nothing wrong." Silangs. "I know. Did you know Marisa was still contracted? I knew she had been attached. Adrian told me the studio was moving on." "Did you ask Mateo whether he wanted you?" "No." Why? Bianca took a long breath. "Because I was afraid he would say no." Elena closed her eyes. "At least the answer was honest. And Adrian made you feel you didn't need anyone else to say yes." "Yes." Bianca's voice broke slightly. "I know you hate me." Elena looked out the window of the fund office at the lights of Makati. "I don't know you well enough to hate you. I slept with your husband. That gives me reasons to be angry. It doesn't mean I need to build my identity around hating you." Bianca was silent. "Why did you answer the call?" she finally asked. Elena thought about it. "Because everyone keeps talking about you, as if you're either an innocent victim or the devil. I wanted to hear whether you could speak like an adult who made choices." "I made bad ones." "Yes." "Do you want me to apologize?" "Only if you understand what you're apologizing for." Bianca hesitated. "I'm sorry I had a relationship with a married man. I'm sorry I accepted the role knowing he was personally involved with me. And I'm sorry I stood on that stage acting like I had earned something when I knew I had skipped parts of the process." Elena said nothing for several seconds. "That's more honest than yesterday. It doesn't fix anything." "No." Before ending the call, Bianca said, "There's something you should know." Elena's body became tense. "What, the lead role wasn't Adrian's first change?" "Explain." "He asked the screenwriter to revise Isabel's age 3 months ago." Elena frowned. "Why? To make the character younger?" "For you, I think so." "Did the writer do it? Some scenes?" Elena stood. "Was Mateo aware?" "Not at first." "Anything else?" Bianca hesitated. "Adrian wanted more romance added between Isabel and the journalist character. He said international buyers wanted it." "Did they? I don't know." After the call, Elena immediately contacted Mateo. His reaction was worse than she expected. "I knew about the age notes. I did not know Bianca was already being considered when they were sent." "What about the romance? I rejected most of it." "Was any of it incorporated?" 2 scenes in the current draft." Elena felt the case expanding again. This was no longer one impulsive casting decision. Adrian had been quietly reshaping the film toward Bianca before formally replacing Marisa. "Why didn't you flag it to the fund?" she asked. Mateo sakay. "Because producers give notes." I disagreed. We argued. Some changes stayed. Some didn't. That's filmmaking. But if the notes were driven by an undisclosed relationship, then the context changes. The following morning, Elena requested every screenplay draft from the previous 6 months. She placed them side by side in the fund conference room. The original Isabel was 45, a theater director with a failed marriage and an adult daughter. In later drafts, Isabel became 38, then 35. Several references to aging disappeared. A romantic subplot grew. One monologue about being treated as invisible after 40 was shortened dramatically. The changes were subtle individually. Together, they changed the center of the character. Mateo arrived carrying coffee and looked at the pages spread across the table. "You found it." Elena nodded. This film was being rewritten around her. Parts of it. Did Adrian order all these changes? Some. Others came through development notes. From whom? Studio creative team. Under Adrian. Yes. Elena rubbed her forehead. Does Marisa know? Not yet. Don't tell her until we understand the full chain. Mateo nodded. Then he looked at Elena carefully. What are you thinking? She stared at the original screenplay. For 2 days. She had been trying to save the production. Now she realized saving the production was not enough. They had to determine whether the story itself had already been compromised. I want to go back to the last draft before Bianca entered the conversation. Mateo's eyes sharpened. That means undoing months of studio notes. Were they good notes? Some were. Then keep the good ones. And the rest. Remove anything that exists because Adrian wanted the film to fit his girlfriend. Mateo slowly smiled. That will make him furious. Elena looked at him. He's not in creative control anymore. That afternoon, Adrian received the revised production governance notice. He read the document twice. His name remained under executive producer because the studio still held contractual rights. But every operational authority beside it had been crossed out or reassigned. Supervising producer Celeste Navarro. Director Mateo Santos. Lead casting approval. Financing committee. Controlled spending, dual authorization. Then another email arrived. Script, integrity review, request for pre-Bianca development drafts. Adrian stared at the subject line. He immediately called Elena. She answered. You're rolling back the script. I'm reviewing it. Those changes weren't all about Bianca. I know. Some made the movie more commercial. Then Mateo can defend them. I'm still executive producer. In credit. The words stung. You can't erase 2 years of my work because I had an affair. I'm not. It feels like you are. Elena looked at the original script in front of her. That's because you still think this is punishment. What else am I supposed to think? That I'm checking how far your conflict infected the project. Silence. Then Adrian said something unexpected. Go back to draft 12. Elena frowned. What? Draft 12? Before the age change. Before the expanded romance. You're telling me to undo your own notes? Yes. Why? A long pause. Because Mateo was right. Elena said nothing. Adrian continued. Quieter. The original character was better. Then why did you change her? This time, there was no corporate answer. Because Bianca wanted the role. And I wanted to believe I could make the role fit her. Elena closed her eyes. Finally, the truth without defense. You almost changed the entire film for her. Yes. And Marisa. I convinced myself she was replaceable. Was she? No. Elena looked through the glass wall at the production files stacked outside. And me? Adrian did not understand at first. What? You convinced yourself Marisa was replaceable because Bianca was new and exciting and fit the version of the film you wanted. Did you do the same thing to me? Silence. Long enough to hurt. I don't know, he finally said. Elena's voice became softer. Then figure it out before you ask me to come home. She ended the call. 3 days later, Marisa signed the revised contract. The financing committee restored limited production funding. Mateo received approval to return to the earlier version of Isabel. The sets remained standing. The crew returned to full preparation. And for the first time since the scandal began, sa likod ng liwanag, had a realistic path back to principal photography. There was only one person who would not be standing on set when the cameras rolled. Adrian Reyes. On the morning the financing restoration notice was issued, Elena walked alone through stage 4. The enormous theater set was still there. But something felt different. A costume rack carried Marisa's restored wardrobe. Production assistants taped new schedules to the walls. Electricians tested the overhead rigs. Nobody was whispering about whether the film had been cancelled anymore. Mateo stood on the stage and called down to her. "We shoot Monday?" Elena looked up. "Are you ready?" "No." She smiled. "Good answer." Mateo laughed. Then he became serious. "You saved it." Elena shook her head. "Not yet." "What's left?" She looked at the fake theater surrounding them, making sure we didn't save the film, just to repeat the same system that almost destroyed it. Mateo nodded slowly. Elena turned toward the exit. On the wall beside the door hung the updated production board. Sa likod ng liwanag, Direktor Mateo Santos. Lead actress Marisa De Leon. Supervising producer Celeste Navarro. Executive producer Adrian Reyes. The last name remained. But now everyone understood something they had forgotten before. A name on top of a project was not the same as owning every decision beneath it. And somewhere, across Manila, Adrian Reyes was beginning to learn the same lesson about his marriage. 5:30 ng umaga noong Lunes. Maliwanag na ang stage 4 ng Reyes Motion Pictures kahit hindi pa sumisikat ng tuluyan ng araw sa labas. Isa-isang dumarating ang production vans, wardrobe assistants at technical crew habang muling nabubuhay ang soundstage na halos isang linggong nakatigil. Sa entrance ay may bagong call sheet na nakadikit sa board Day 1 Principal Photography Resumption. Sa ilalim nito, malinaw ang pangalan ni Marisa De Leon bilang Isabel. Walang espesyal na announcement, walang press conference, at walang dramatic comeback video. Iyon mismo ang hiniling niya. Dumating si Marisa ng 6:15. Nakasuot ng simpleng black hoodie at jeans. Kasama ang kanyang assistant. Nang makita siya ng ilang crew members, natural na nagsimula ang palakpakan. Huminto siya. Tumingin sa paligid at itinaas ang isang kamay. Trabaho muna bago redemption story. Biro niya. Nagtawanan ang crew. At sa loob ng ilang segundo ay nabawasan ang bigat ng nakaraang linggo. Elena arrived shortly afterward. Not because she intended to supervise filming, but because the investment committee required a representative present during the first 3 resumed production days. She deliberately stayed near the monitor area rather than inside Mateo's creative space. Ang trabaho niya ay siguraduhin gumagana ang bagong controls. Hindi maging direktor dahil siya ang may pera. Celeste Navarro moved around the set with 3 phones. A tablet and the expression of a woman who had accepted a promotion before fully understanding how much sleep it would cost. "You look terrible," sabi ni Elena nang lumapit ito. "Thank you." Investor. "Compliment iyon sa production." "Then I'm doing amazing." Celeste handed her the revised expenditure dashboard. All departments spending above the new threshold now required dual approval. Talent commitments were separated from general production costs. No executive override existed without written committee notice. "It's lower," Celeste admitted. "But people ask more questions before spending." Elena nodded. "Then maybe slower isn't always worse." Mateo called everyone into position shortly before 7. The first scene was deliberately small, Isabel entering the abandoned theater alone after 20 years. Marisa stood behind the old wooden doors of the constructed set while the camera waited inside. Walang malaking dialogue. Just a woman stepping into a place she had spent years avoiding. Mateo had chosen it months earlier as the first scene because he wanted Marisa's first real encounter with the set to become part of the performance. The irony was not lost on Elena. Pictures up, sigaw ng assistant director. The soundstage quieted. Roll sound. Sound speed. Camera. Rolling. Mateo leaned toward the monitor. And action? The wooden doors opened. Marisa entered slowly. She did not cry. She did not need to. Her face carried recognition, resentment, and a kind of exhausted affection that made the entire stage seem suddenly smaller. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. This was the character she had read in the original script. A woman old enough to have history written into the way she moved. A woman who did not need to be made younger to remain worth watching. Marisa crossed the dusty theater aisle, touched the back of an old chair, and whispered the first line. Akala ko kapag matagal kang hindi bumalik, mawawala rin ang pakiramdam na iniwan mo ang isang bagay. Mateo waited 3 seconds after she finished. Cut. Nobody moved. Then he smiled. That's the movie. The crew applauded. Marisa exhaled and looked toward him. You better not make me do 20 takes after saying that. Ninette. I hate you. The room laughed. Elena smiled with everyone else. But something about the line remained with her. Akala ko kapag matagal kang hindi bumalik. She wondered whether distance actually changed anything or merely made the unanswered questions quieter. For nearly 2 weeks, she and Adrian had spoken only about production and legal matters. He had respected her instruction not to come to the apartment. He had not sent flowers. He had not appeared outside her office. He had not used his mother or friends to contact her. Part of Elena appreciated it. Another part, one she disliked admitting, wondered whether his silence meant relief. At 10 that morning, the answer arrived in the form of a short message. I know today is the first shoot. I won't come. Please tell Mateo and the crew I hope it goes well. No need to reply. Elena read it twice. There was nothing manipulative in it. That almost made it harder. She locked her phone and returned her attention to the monitors. The first 3 days went better than expected. Production remained slightly behind schedule but within the revised contingency. Marisa and Mateo quickly recovered their rhythm. Celeste discovered she was better at supervising than she had believed. The crew adapted to the new financial controls with surprisingly little resistance once they understood that the system protected payroll instead of threatening it. By Thursday, the completion guarantor lifted its heightened risk notice. By Friday, VAMF restored the next scheduled financing tranche. The film had survived its first crisis. Reyes Motion Pictures had not escaped as easily. Adrian's board opened a formal governance review into his conduct. The affair itself was a personal matter until it intersected with corporate decisions. But the undisclosed conflict, unauthorized casting action, and improper payment authorization were not. He temporarily surrendered authority over all talent-related commitments across the studio above a specified amount. 2 independent directors were added to a special oversight committee. The finance controller who had processed Bianca's payment was not fired after the audit showed he had raised objections in writing before Adrian overruled him. Instead, the board revised the approval chain so no CEO could unilaterally convert a disputed commitment into an approved expense code. For Adrian, the humiliation was precise. He remained CEO, but his company was redesigning its systems around the possibility that he could not always be trusted with unchecked discretion. One evening, His father Roberto Reyes entered his office without knocking. Roberto had founded the company 30 years earlier as a small production house before Adrian transformed it into a modern studio group. At 68, he still carried the habit of speaking as though every disagreement was a negotiation he intended to win. "You let your wife put controls around your own company," he said. Adrian did not look up from the report. "The board put controls around me. Because her fund demanded it. Because I gave them a reason." Roberto scoffed. "Men make mistakes." Adrian finally looked at him. "Then men pay for them?" "You're talking like her lawyer." Maybe because her lawyer was right. Roberto sat opposite him. "You built this company into what it is. With other people's money, talent and labor. And now you're letting Elena embarrass you publicly." Adrian's expression changed. "Elena protected the studio from my mistake. If she had terminated financing instead of restructuring, we would have lost the film, millions in sunk costs, and possibly our distribution commitment. Don't confuse consequence with humiliation." Roberto studied his son. "Are you trying to get her back?" Adrian looked down. "I don't know if I'm allowed to think about that yet. She's your wife. That doesn't mean she owes me access." Roberto laughed without humor. "This generation turns marriage into contracts." Adrian almost smiled at the irony. Maybe my problem was treating both marriage and contracts as if they would survive whatever I decided. Roberto had no answer to that. Bianca's situation also began to settle. Her agency did not drop her permanently, but she was placed under a 6-month internal conduct review and assigned a new manager. The 2 million peso commitment was voided because no valid final contract had existed. She lost the role, the public momentum, and a streaming series she had rejected while waiting for Sa Likod ng Liwanag. The internet punishment was harsher than anything contractual. Every photograph became evidence of character. Old interviews were clipped out of context. Comment sections filled with insults. One tabloid published the address of the condominium building where she lived, forcing her to stay temporarily with her sister. When Elena learned about it, she called Daniel immediately. "Can we do anything about the address? It wasn't our leak." "I know. Can we still help get it removed?" Daniel paused. "We can ask counsel to contact the publisher and platforms." "Do which? Do you want Bianca to know it came from you?" "No." Aviaklot. Bianca found out anyway. She sent Elena a message. "My manager told me your counsel helped with the address." "You didn't have to." Elena stared at the screen before replying. "What you did to me doesn't make stalking you acceptable. Those are separate things." Bianca answered only, "Thank you." Elena did not respond further. Near the end of the second production week, Marisa asked Elena to have lunch with her in the studio canteen. They sat in a corner away from the crew, eating rice, grilled fish, and vegetables from plastic trays. "You know what everyone thinks?" Marisa asked. "That the investor is secretly eating canteen food? That you're going to divorce him?" Elena almost choked on her water. "Projección gossip is efficient. More efficient than your lawyers." Elena shook her head. "I haven't decided." Marisa nodded. "Good. Good people love clean endings. Cheating husband gets destroyed. Powerful wife walks away in heels. Mistress disappears. Everyone learns a lesson. You make it sound like a bad movie. It usually is." Elena smiled. Marisa continued. "Real life is annoying because sometimes someone does something unforgivable and you still love parts of them. Sometimes you leave. Sometimes you stay. Sometimes you take 6 months just to figure out whether love is even the right question. Elena studied her. Are you giving me advice? Absolutely not. I hate responsibility. They both laughed. Then Marisa became serious. I was married once. Elena knew from old interviews but said nothing. He didn't cheat. At least I don't think he did. We just became people who only spoke when something was wrong. By the time we separated, neither of us could remember the last ordinary conversation we enjoyed. She looked at Elena. Whatever you decide, don't make the decision only around the affair. Ask whether the marriage before the affair was something you actually want back. That question stayed with Elena long after lunch. That night, she returned alone to the apartment she had shared with Adrian. Nothing had changed physically. His books remained on the shelf. 2 jackets still hung near the entryway. His coffee mug was in the cabinet beside hers. The domestic normality felt almost offensive. Elena sat at the dining table where Adrian had first placed the screenplay of Sa Likod ng Liwanag almost 2 years earlier. She remembered him talking for an hour about why the film mattered. He had been excited, vulnerable and uncertain whether the studio could afford the risk. She had loved that version of him not because he needed her money, but because he still knew how to admit he did not know whether something would work. When had that man become the executive who assumed approval would follow him? And when had she stopped challenging him before the consequences became enormous? The second question did not excuse the affair. Elena refused to confuse understanding a marriage with accepting responsibility for someone else's betrayal. But she could acknowledge her own pattern. When Adrian began staying late, she complained less because arguments exhausted her. When he stopped asking about her fund work, she stopped explaining it. When they canceled weekends together, she told herself, mature marriages did not require constant attention. She had been unhappy before Bianca. She had simply become skilled at functioning while unhappy. At 11:30, Elena opened their message thread. She typed 3 different sentences and deleted them. Finally, she wrote, "Can you meet me Saturday? Not about the film." Adrian replied less than a minute later. "Yes. Tell me where and when." They met at a small restaurant in Quezon City where they had gone during the first year of their marriage. Before Adrian's company became large enough that every fashionable place in Makati contained someone who recognized him. Elena arrived first. Adrian came 10 minutes later and stopped beside the table as though unsure whether he was allowed to sit. "Hi?" "Hi." He sat. For several minutes, they talked about food. It was awkward. But Elena had deliberately chosen not to begin with accusation. She wanted to see whether they could still exist in the same space without the film acting as a translator between them. Eventually, she asked, why Bianca Adrian did not pretend not to understand. I've been asking myself that. And the easiest answer is that she admired me. Elena's face remained neutral. I admired you. You knew me too well. That sounds like a complaint. It was my weakness, not yours. He looked down. At work, people treated me like the person who knew what to do. At home, you knew when I was scared. You knew when the company was in trouble. You knew which decisions were locked. Bianca met me after most of the struggle. To her, I was already the successful version. And you liked being seen that way. Yes. Elena stirred her coffee. Did you love her? Adrian did not answer immediately. I thought I might. That isn't the same thing. No. Do you now? No. She watched his face. Because she ended it. Partly because once everything became public, I had to look at what the relationship actually was, instead of what it allowed me to avoid. which was feeling like I had failed at home. Elena's expression hardened. You could have talked to me. I know. Stop saying you know as though knowing afterward is impressive. You're right. And stop saying I'm right every time I'm angry? Adrian almost smiled, then realized she was serious. Okay. She leaned back. Were you really going to leave me after production started? Adrian looked at the table. I had told Bianca I would make a decision. That's not what I asked. He inhaled. I was thinking about leaving. The truth hurt even though she already knew it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure. So you wanted to keep the marriage until you were sure the replacement worked. Adrian's face tightened. When you say it that way, is it wrong? He remained silent. No. Elena looked toward the window. That's the part I don't know how to forgive. Adrian did not interrupt. Not the sex. Not even the lying. Although that's terrible enough. It's that you gave yourself a transition period without telling me I was being evaluated against someone else. You got to explore another life while I was still living inside the old one. Adrian's eyes filled. I'm sorry. Elena nodded. I believe you're sorry. He looked at her. Surprised. That doesn't mean I forgive you. I know. This time she allowed the phrase. After a long silence, Adrian asked, Do you want a divorce? Elena looked directly at him. I don't know. Do you want to try? I don't know that either. He nodded. Then what do you want from me? I want you to stop asking me to decide on a timeline that makes your uncertainty easier. Adrian absorbed that. Okay. I want space. I want the film separated from us. I want you to stay out of the apartment for now. And I want you to see someone. A therapist. Yes. Together. Not yet. You first. Adrian almost laughed. That sounds ominous. It should. Before they left, Adrian reached into his pocket. Elena stiffened slightly, but he only placed a small envelope on the table. What is this? My access card to your fund's private screening room and the proxy authorization you gave me 2 years ago for foundation events. Elena frowned. Why are you returning them? Because I realized how many things I kept access to, simply because I was your husband. He pushed the envelope toward her. If you want me to have access again, you can decide later. Elena looked at the envelope. It was such a small gesture compared with the damage. But it was specific. No flowers. No jewelry. No promise. Just relinquishing something he had previously assumed belonged to him. Thank you, she said. Adrian nodded. When Elena returned home that night, she placed the envelope beside her wedding ring. She did not put the ring back on. 3 weeks later, Sa Likod ng Liwanag completed its first major shooting block. The production was only 2 days behind the revised schedule. Mateo had restored most of the older script while retaining a handful of genuinely useful changes from later drafts. Marisa delivered what the crew began calling the balcony scene in 3 takes, leaving even the camera operator wiping his eyes. Celeste had settled into her authority. The independent compliance officer reported no significant spending violations. For the first time, Elena attended the weekly review without finding a crisis waiting inside the documents. Then Mateo asked her to remain after everyone else left. We have a problem. Elena sighed. I was starting to get suspicious of the piece. Mateo handed her a casting sheet. Our supporting actor for Rafael has a scheduling conflict. His series got extended. We need a replacement. Elena stared at him. Please tell me this does not involve anyone's mistress. Not unless you know something I don't. She laughed despite herself. What do you need from me? Nothing yet. I just wanted you to know before casting starts. Elena looked at him. That was the change. Not that problems had stopped happening. People were simply no longer hiding them until after decisions had been made. Thank you. The new casting process took 4 days. Mateo auditioned 6 actors. Celeste handled negotiations. The financing committee received the recommendation only after Mateo chose his preferred candidate. Elena did not attend the auditions. When the approval request arrived, she reviewed the budget, availability, and contract terms. Then signed. Boring. Slow. Proper. That evening, she received a message from Adrian. I heard Rafael was recast. Elena replied, yes. A minute later, I also heard nobody announced him before approval. Miracles happen. Elena stared at the screen, then laughed. She replied before overthinking it, your studio is evolving. Adrian answered, apparently supervision builds character. She did not respond, but she was still smiling when she put the phone down. A month after filming resumed, Reyes Motion Pictures Board completed its review. Adrian would remain CEO, but the board permanently adopted stronger conflict of interest rules. Romantic or close personal relationships with talent, vendors or executives involved in company decisions had to be disclosed when relevant to contracts or hiring. Key talent commitments above a set threshold required dual approval. CEO overrides would be documented and automatically reviewed by an independent director. Adrian accepted the measures without objection. Roberto Reyes did not. At the board dinner following the decision, he confronted Elena for the first time since the scandal. You've turned a family company into a bureaucracy, he said. Elena placed her water glass down. I don't sit on your board. Your financing forced their hand. Adrian's behavior forced their hand. Roberto's expression hardened. You enjoy this. Enjoy watching him lose authority. Elena stared at him. No. Then why keep punishing him, Adrian? Seated several chairs away. Began to stand. Elena raised one hand slightly. She did not need rescuing. Mr. Reyes, if I wanted to punish your son, I would have terminated the financing when I had the right to do it. Instead, I helped structure a way for his studio to keep the film. Roberto scoffed. Because you wanted control. No. Because 200 people should not lose work because your son wanted to impress his girlfriend. The table went silent. Roberto's face reddened. That is my son you're talking about. And I'm his wife. Then act like one. Elena stared at him. Before she could answer, Adrian spoke. No. Everyone turned toward him. Roberto frowned. What? Adrian's voice remained calm. Don't tell her how to act like my wife. She is humiliating this family. I humiliated this family. Adrian. No. You keep talking as if Elena created the consequences because you don't want to say I created the problem. He looked at his father. She had every contractual right to walk away from the film. She didn't. She protected the production while removing me from decisions I had proven I couldn't make objectively. That isn't betrayal. Roberto stared at him. What happened to you? Adrian gave a tired smile. Apparently, supervision builds character. Elena almost laughed. Roberto did not. He left the table several minutes later. Outside the restaurant, Elena found Adrian waiting for his car. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, I did. I can defend myself. I know. Then why Adrian looked at her? Because defending you isn't the same as assuming you need me to rescue you. She did not have an immediate answer. His car arrived. He opened the door, then stopped. "Good night, Elena." "Good night?" He did not ask whether she wanted a ride. He did not ask when they would meet again. He simply left. Elena watched the car disappear into Manila traffic. For the first time since the scandal, she felt something dangerous. Not forgiveness. Hope. And hope frightened her because anger had been simpler. Anger required distance. Hope required judgment. 2 months after principal photography resumed, Mateo filmed the final scene on the theater set. Isabel stood alone on stage while workers reopened the fictional theater around her. The original script had ended with her daughter asking whether she was staying. In Adrian's revised draft, Isabel had answered with a romantic declaration about starting over. Mateo restored the older version. "Are you staying?" the daughter asked. Marisa looked around the theater. Then she answered, "I'm staying tonight." Nothing more. No forever. No promise that one good decision repaired every old wound. "Just tonight?" Mateo whispered. Cut. The soundstage erupted in applause. Principal photography was complete. Marisa hugged Mateo. Celeste cried openly. Crew members took photographs beneath the theater marquee. Elena stood near the monitors, clapping with everyone else. Her phone vibrated. A message from Adrian. "Congratulations. I heard you rap." She looked toward the stage. "We did." His reply came a moment later. "You saved the film." Elena considered correcting him. Instead, she typed, "We stopped one person from destroying everyone else's work. That's different." Several seconds passed. "I know. I was that person." Elena stared at the words. Then another message appeared. "I'm glad the film survived me." This time, she did not know what to say. So she put the phone away and joined the crew photograph. 3 months earlier, Adrian had stood on that same stage with Bianca beside him and introduced her as the woman who would carry the film. He had believed the producer chose the star. The CEO controlled the project and the husband understood how far his wife would bend. Now Marisa stood at the center of the photograph. Mateo stood beside her. Celeste held the slate. Electricians, camera assistants, costume staff, carpenters and production assistants crowded around them. Elena deliberately remained near the edge. She liked it there because sa likod ng liwanag had finally become what it should have been from the beginning. Not Adrian's movie. Not Elena's investment. Not Bianca's opportunity. Not Marisa's revenge. A film built by hundreds of people whose work mattered even when their names were not above the title. When the photographer counted to 3, Elena smiled. The camera flashed. And somewhere beyond the studio walls, another decision was waiting for her. The film had survived. Now she had to decide whether the marriage should. 3 buwan matapos ang principal photography ng Sa Likod ng Liwanag. Tahimik ho ng Reyes Motion Pictures kaysa sa panahong nagsisimula pa lang ang scandal. Hindi na pinag-uusapan araw-araw ang suspension, ang unauthorized casting o ang 2 milyong piso na muntik nang ma-release kay Bianca. Ang production ay nasa post-production na. Si Mateo ay halos nakatira sa editing suite. Si Marisa ay abala sa ADR at final pick-ups. At si Celeste ay natutong matulog ng 4 na oras nang hindi nagrereklamo. Ang mas malaking pagbabago ay hindi nakikita sa set. Nasa proseso iyon. Bawat talent agreement ay may malinaw na disclosure. Bawat major expense ay dumadaan sa tamang approval. Bawat creative change na nakakaapekto sa key personnel ay may documentation. Walang dramatic banner na nagsasabing, "We learned our lesson." Pero, araw-araw, iba na ang ginagawa ng mga tao. Para kay Elena. Iyon ang mas mahalaga kaysa public apology. Sa fund office, natanggap niya ang final rough cut sa isang encrypted screening link. Hindi siya nanood agad. Isang buong araw niyang hinintay bago buksan ang pelikula sa maliit na private screening room ng VAMF. Mag-isa lang siya. Walang Adrian. Walang Mateo. Walang investment committee. Sa unang eksena, pumasok si Isabel sa lumang teatro. Sa gitna ng pelikula, nakipagtalo siya sa anak tungkol sa kung alin ang mas masakit ang maiiwan o ang hindi mapiling manatili. Sa final act, hindi nagkaroon ng malaking romantic reunion. Hindi rin ibinalik ng pelikula ang lahat sa dati. Sa huling eksena, tinanong si Isabel kung mananatili siya. At tulad ng ginawa ni Marisa sa shooting, ang sagot niya ay simple, "I'm staying tonight." Elena stared at the screen long after the credits began rolling. Hindi iyon happy ending sa tradisyonal na paraan. Mas totoo iyon. At iyon ang dahilan kung bakit gumana. Kinabukasan, tinawagan siya ni Mateo. "So, tanong nito, you know it's good. I want to hear you say it." Elena smiled. "It's good. Good. Very good. Better." Mateo paused. "Adrian watched it yesterday. And he cried?" Elena laughed. "Of course he did. He also asked me if the old version of Isabel was really better." "What did you say?" I told him if he still had to ask. "Therapy wasn't working." Elena laughed harder. Cruel. Efficient. Adrian had indeed continued therapy. Not because Elena demanded monthly proof, but because he stopped talking about it, unless relevant. That mattered. 6 months earlier, he would have turned every improvement into evidence that he deserved another chance. Now, he seemed to understand that growth performed for reward was still performance. He attended the studio board meetings, accepted the new governance system, and worked on projects where he had no personal financial override. He also deliberately stayed away from sa likod ng liwanag post-production, except where corporate approval was formally required. Mateo eventually told Elena that Adrian had watched 3 edits but never once tried to change a scene. He disagreed with one cut, Mateo said. And he wrote a note, then deleted it. Elena smiled. Growth? Bianca's career recovered more slowly. She did not disappear from the industry. But the scandal changed how people saw her. Some producers avoided her. Others wanted to exploit the notoriety. Her new manager turned down a reality show built around the other woman who lost the movie. Bianca accepted a supporting role in a small streaming drama instead. Months later, Elena received a message from her. I got a role through an open audition. No producer boyfriend. Thought you'd appreciate the irony. Elena started at it. Then replied, good. Earn the next one too. Bianca sent back a laughing emoji and nothing else. That was enough. The premiere of Sa Likod ng Liwanag was scheduled for a restored theater in Manila. The studio wanted Elena seated in the front row beside Adrian because the press knew enough of the financing story to find their presence interesting. Elena refused the arrangement. I'm attending as investor. She told the publicist. Seat me with the fund team. But mom? The optics. Exactly. She did not want the premiere turned into a marital reconciliation campaign. Adrian did not object. When the publicist asked him separately, he said, follow her preference. On the night of the premiere, Elena arrived in a deep blue gown. Elegant but restrained. She sat beside Daniel Lim, and 2 investment committee members. Adrian sat with the Reyes Motion Pictures board several rows away. Marisa arrived to loud applause. Mateo walked the carpet holding his wife's hand. Celeste looked like she had not slept for a year and loved every second of it. Bianca was not invited, but neither was she publicly mentioned. Elena was grateful. The film received a standing ovation. After the screening, Marisa hugged Elena tightly. "You know what I like most," she said. "What people are going to talk about the movie now. Not the scandal." Elena looked toward the audience still discussing the final scene. That was the goal. Mateo joined them. "You two are being too sentimental. Go drink something." Marisa laughed and disappeared toward the reception. Adrian approached only after Elena was alone. He stopped a respectful distance away. Hi. Congratulations. You too. I didn't do much at the end." Elena looked at him. "You did less damage?" He smiled faintly. "I'll take it." They stood in silence. Then Adrian said, "I'm glad Marisa stayed." "Me too." "I'm glad Mateo ignored most of my notes." "Me too." "I'm also glad you didn't kill the film." Elena studied him. "That part still surprise you, sometimes?" "Why?" "Because I don't know if I would have been that disciplined if our positions were reversed." The honesty was uncomfortable. Elena appreciated it. Maybe that's why our positions needed to be reversed once. The premiere went well enough that distributors began asking for international dates. A festival in Busan expressed interest. Local critics praised Marisa's performance and Mateo's restraint. One review specifically noted that the film resisted turning an older female character into a romantic object. Elena sent the review to Mateo with a message. "Imagine if someone had made her younger." Mateo replied, "I know a producer who can answer that." She laughed and forwarded nothing to Adrian. Several weeks later, Elena and Adrian began joint counseling. Not because she had decided to reconcile, because she was finally ready to ask whether there was something left worth rebuilding. The first session was awkward. The counselor asked what each of them wanted. Adrian answered first. "I want a marriage where Elena doesn't have to shrink for me to feel secure." Elena looked at him. The counselor asked her, "I want to know whether I still want him when I'm not afraid of losing the years we already spent together." Adrian's expression changed, but he did not interrupt. The sessions were not romantic. They were exhausting. Elena talked about how she had become emotionally absent before the affair because she believed mature love meant not needing much. Adrian talked about how success made him addicted to environments where people deferred to him. They discussed Bianca only when necessary. The counselor repeatedly reminded them that explaining why betrayal happened did not redistribute responsibility for the betrayal. Adrian accepted that. Elena appreciated it. One session became especially difficult when the counselor asked, "What did each of you lose before the affair happened?" Adrian answered, "Curiosity." Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at her. "I stopped being curious about you. I thought because I knew your routines, your family, your work schedule, I knew you. I stopped asking what you were excited about, what you hated, what you wanted to change." Bianca felt new because I was still curious about her. Elena's eyes filled. "And me, I treated you like a story I had finished reading." She looked away. That hurt more than many of the obvious betrayals. When it was her turn, Elena said, "I lost my willingness to ask for attention." Adrian looked at her. "Why?" "Because every time work won, I told myself I was being understanding. Eventually I stopped asking because I didn't want to feel rejected." The counselor asked. Did that cause the affair? Elena answered immediately. No. Adrian said at the same time. No. They looked at each other. That small agreement mattered. Months passed. There was no dramatic moment where Elena woke up and decided she had forgiven him. Forgiveness came in smaller pieces. She stopped checking whether every late meeting meant something else. Adrian stopped using location sharing or constant updates as proof of innocence because the counselor pointed out that surveillance was not trust. Instead, he learned to volunteer context without making Elena responsible for monitoring him. Elena learned to say when something triggered her instead of punishing him with silence. Some nights, they failed. Then they tried again. The studio changed too. 1 year after the scandal, the board published a formal internal ethics policy covering romantic relationships that intersected with casting, hiring, vendor selection, and compensation decisions. It did not ban relationships. It required disclosure and recusal. Adrian presented the policy himself at an all-hands meeting. He did not mention Bianca by name. He did not frame himself as a hero for fixing what he broke. This exists because authority without disclosure creates pressure people shouldn't have to navigate. He said, including pressure I created. The room was quiet. Afterward, a junior producer approached Elena and said, Ma'am, nobody at this company used to say things like conflict of interest out loud. Elena replied, Good. Keep saying it. Sa likod ng liwanag eventually became a modest commercial success and a major critical one. Marisa received an acting nomination. Mateo won a directing award. Celeste was promoted to full producer and immediately complained that everyone had rewarded her suffering with more work. The film did not save Reyes Motion Pictures financially, but it restored credibility. More importantly, it proved that the studio could survive without the CEO controlling every decision. At the awards ceremony, Adrian and Elena arrived separately but ended up seated near each other. When Marisa won Best Actress, she walked on stage and said, This role almost disappeared because someone thought women become less interesting when they get older. The audience laughed. Adrian covered his face. Elena leaned toward him. That one's for you, he whispered. I know. Marisa continued. Luckily, a lot of people fought for the story to stay honest. She thanked Mateo, Celeste, the crew, and the financing team. She did not thank Adrian by name. He applauded anyway. After the ceremony, Adrian and Elena walked outside together. You okay? She asked. I'm alive. Very brave. I deserve the speech. Elena gave him a look. We've discussed your addiction to saying that. Right. Sorry. She laughed. Also discussed that. He smiled. By then, Elena had begun wearing her wedding ring again occasionally. Not every day. She did not treat it like a public announcement. Some days, she wore it. Some days, she left it in the jewelry box. Adrian never asked. That was part of the new rule between them. Symbols did not get to make decisions on behalf of people. One Saturday afternoon, nearly 18 months after the studio scandal, Elena went to Stage 4 for a private screening of a new independent film the fund was considering. The theater set from Sa Likod ng Liwanag was gone. In its place stood a half-built apartment interior for a completely different project. For a moment, Elena felt strangely sad. So much of the worst and best parts of that year had happened under that roof. And now the physical evidence had already been painted over. Adrian entered from the side door. You're early. So are you. I'm not involved in the investment meeting. Then why are you here? I have another production downstairs. He looked around the empty stage. Weird? No, Elena nodded. I expected the theater to stay forever. Sets don't. Good thing. Adrian looked at her. You still think about that day? Sometimes? Me too. They walked toward the center of the soundstage. Elena stopped approximately where Adrian had once stood beside Bianca and introduced her as the new lead. You were standing here, she said. Adrian looked at the floor. I remember. And I was back there. She pointed toward the lighting rigs. I barely noticed you when you came in. I know. No. I mean literally. I think I saw you and thought, Elena's here. Then went back to the announcement. He exhaled. That bothers me now. It should. I had become very good at seeing you only when I needed you. Elena folded her arms. Do you still need me? Adrian smiled slightly. Yes? She raised an eyebrow. Dangerous answer? But not in the way I thought. Explain. He looked around the empty soundstage. I don't need you to finance my work. I don't need you to make my life easier. I don't need you to protect me from failure. He paused. I need you because I love who I am when I'm honest enough to be known by you. But if you decide that isn't enough reason to stay married, I still have to become that person. Elaine stared at him for a long moment. That's annoyingly good. Therapy? Expensive. Very. They laughed. Then Adrian asked, Do you want to come home? Elena's face changed. They had avoided that exact question for months. Which home? Our old place. She shook her head. No. He accepted it immediately. Then she continued, I don't want the old place. Too much of our marriage there was built around routines we stopped choosing. Adrian looked at her. Okay. I've been thinking about selling it. He blinked. You have? Yes. What would we do? Elena looked at him. There it was. Not what would you do? What would we do? She smiled faintly. Maybe choose somewhere new. Adrian did not move. Are you saying? I'm saying maybe. He laughed once, almost in disbelief. I've learned not to negotiate with maybe. Good. Can I hug you? Elena looked at him. Look at you asking. I'm evolving. She stepped forward first. He hugged her carefully. No applause. No cameras. No crew. Nothing cinematic. Exactly right. 6 months later, they sold the old condominium and moved into a smaller home in Quezon City. Closer to the studio, but far enough that Adrian could not pretend. Every emergency required him to sleep at work. Elena kept her fund office separate. They maintained independent professional structures. Adrian never regained informal access to the investment fund. If Reyes Motion Pictures wanted financing, it submitted proposals like everyone else. Their marriage did not return to what it had been. That was the point. At the second anniversary screening of Sa Likod ng Liwanag, the restored theater hosted a special event for film students. Mateo complained that he was being treated like a historical artifact. Marissa told him to enjoy it. Celeste arrived late and blamed traffic even though everyone knew she had come from another set. Adrian sat several seats away from Elena during the panel because he was representing the studio and she represented the fund. A student asked, What saved the movie when production stopped? The room expected Elena to answer. She looked toward Mateo. Mateo looked toward Celeste. Celeste pointed at the crew members seated near the back. Adrian finally took the microphone. The movie survived because we stopped treating one person's authority as more important than everyone else's work. Elena watched him. 2 years earlier, he could not have said that. The student asked, "Was it hard to lose control?" Adrian smiled. "Yes." The audience laughed. Then he added, "It was also necessary." After the event, Elena and Adrian remained inside the theater after everyone else left. The house lights were half on. The screen still displayed the final frame of Isabel standing inside the reopened theater. Adrian looked at it. "I used to hate that ending." Elena smiled. "Because she only says she's staying tonight." "Yes. I wanted something more romantic." "And now?" "Now I think forever is sometimes just a lot of nights where people choose again." Elena looked at him. "That's suspiciously sentimental." "I'm still a producer." She laughed. Adrian held out his hand. He did not grab hers. He waited. Elena looked at it, then at the screen, then back at the man beside her. The marriage had survived. Not because she was the investor. Not because he was the CEO. Not because Bianca disappeared. Not because the film succeeded. It survived because after everything broke, neither of them was allowed to assume the next scene. They had to choose it. Elena took his hand. "Tonight?" she said. Adrian smiled. "Tonight." On the screen, the final image faded slowly to black. And for once, neither of them needed to know exactly what came after the credits.